Welcome to the Stocks on the Rock show. Whether you like it neat, on the rocks, chilled, or warm, everybody's happier when there's money in their account and a drink in their glass. Let's get started. This week's edition, Stocks on the Rocks, we're going to talk about something that's a little bit more complicated than you think it might be. That's right, we're talking social media and Scotch. So I have an interesting story, which I found rather interesting and rather unique. My wife has become obsessed with this new show, Outlander, and I don't know if anybody else has had this or not, but this show Outlander is all about somebody traveling through time and going to the Highlands of Scotland. And well, my wife decided that I wondered if my husband is Scottish, and we were joking around, and so I took one of those Ancestry DNA kits, and my entire life, I have been Italian. I said, honey, I am not Scottish. Just stop thinking about it. I am Italian. I love pasta. I like pizza. I mean, I speak Italian. Lasagna, ziti bolognese, huh? That's who I am. It's what I do. So I take this DNA test and it comes back. I am Italian. 2%. I was 97% Scottish. Now, how did that happen? I don't know. But I'm drinking Scotch now. So I thought that today, I am not a Scotch expert. So you're gonna get the Scotch review from somebody who's not a traditional Scotch drinker. So my wife now has become obsessed with our Scottish heritage and has made friends across the pond as she seems to keep coming up with more and more reasons why we need to visit Scotland. And as we come up with more and more reasons, she asked her Scottish friends, yes, because she's made those, what's a good Scotch to begin? If you're a newbie to Scotch, what's a good Scotch to begin, right? We did an entry-level bourbon. Basil Hayden's as an entry-level bourbon. What's a good entry-level Scotch? We're going to go, and the one that was not my pick. This came from the Scotsman's, Glenmorangie. So this is Glenmorangie, the La Santa Sherry Cask. And when I think of Scotsman, I think of Braveheart. I think of Braveheart with a blue face. I don't think of beautiful Highland valleys. But apparently, that's what this is. Matter of fact, the word Glenmorangie is actually distilled in the Highlands of Scotland in Tain. Tain, which is way the heck up there, where it's really cold in the winter. And I'm guessing it rains a lot. But one of the things that is unique about Glenmorangie is that they've got very tall stills. And the very tall stills are supposed to give it an additional layers and complexity of flavors. The other thing is that Tain is supposed to have Glenmorangie itself means Valley of Tranquility. So it's supposed to have a very tranquil feel. The water is tranquil. And the clarity of the water is something that's integral into this bottle. So this is finished in French sherry casks. So it does have a sherry finish, and I think that's partially designed for us Americans that like things that are a little bit sweeter. It's definitely a more complex flavor than bourbon. So just open it up right off the nose. The sherry's the first thing that hits you. I mean, it hits you immediately is the sherry. Now, if you're used to doing bourbon, which I am, this comes out as already a slightly darker color than bourbon. And when you really go in and kind of smell and see what's there, you definitely get the sherry right off the nose. But the other thing that you get is the smoke. And you don't get that same smoke in a bourbon. Here you get that peat smoke that hits you, but it's not overpowering. This is not a punch you in the face with peat kind of drink. I've had scotches where I feel like I'm drinking the landscaping, right? And I don't want to drink landscaping. I'm not a huge fan of the taste of mulch. And this one doesn't really give me that taste of mulch feel. It gives me an eloquent, tranquil feel. It's Glenmorangie. So is it something that opens up? So now I will tell you This is actually only the second sip I've had of this bottle. This bottle is halfway empty, and that would come from my actual Italian wife drinking half the bottle of Scotch over the weeks that we've had this bottle. So to me, this is a brand new flavor, right? This is a brand new taste. And so to kind of explain what I taste, if you're not big into Scotch, it's definitely going to be there are definitely more layers of flavor than there are with a bourbon. With a bourbon, you get more subtle, and it sounds weird to say it, but in my brain, I think of more rounded notes. With a Scotch, it's more like here's a punch, here's a punch, here's a punch, and you get different flavors kind of at different spots. The ending flavor is, in my mind, right? This is me. I don't do a lot of cigars, but if I did do cigars, the ending flavor is almost like a very light cigar. You almost taste like you've just smoked a very light cigar. Not big, but just a little bit. And that's the smoke. Now, when you first drink it, you immediately get a lot of the sherry. The sherry, in my mind, hits me first. I actually get hit with the sherry first. I can then, a hint of salt. It's a little bit more salty than a bourbon is a little bit more sweet. So there's a little bit of salt. And then it seems like it kind of mellows out. And then it's like, bam! Here comes the peat. But it's not a lot. It's a very, very smooth one. So I think for an entry-level Scotch, from what people say, this is probably a pretty good one. I've had Scotches that are not entry-level, and I feel like I'm drinking my landscaping. This does not make me feel in that way. This makes me feel like it's approachable. Would I drink this all night? Probably not. I'm probably this is more of a one glass, sip it and enjoy kind of drink. But that's what it's meant to be, right? That's what it's meant to be. So if you are new into Scotch and you want something that is from the Scotsman, has been told, is a little bit more, a little bit less harsh, and something that can let you in, Glenmorangie La Santa is a way to go. Now, there's a lot of complexity, and there's a lot more that goes on in a bottle of Scotch than in bourbon, right? Bourbon's just kind of one note. So speaking of things where there's a lot more going on than what appears to be on the surface, we're going to talk about Facebook. Facebook is a great stock to talk about when there's a lot more going on than what it just appears to be on the surface. So everybody knows what Facebook is, and I love thinking about Facebook because I go all the way back, right? And I go back to when I had a MySpace account. Anybody remember MySpace? I had a MySpace account. Everybody was friends with Tom. And this whole MySpace thing, MySpace and Facebook kind of came out at the same time, and there was a little bit of a war as to which one would ultimately be the winner. And it seems that I think it's pretty obvious now that Facebook has done so. But then Facebook, they got everything else that came on board, right? Instagram for pictures and Snapface and Google Plus, which, by the way, Google Plus, I think they tried really hard, but it went the way of the Zune player. I don't think that Google Plus really made it. You've got LinkedIn, which was eventually purchased by Microsoft. You've got TikTok now for short social videos. You've got Twitter. All these different social medias. But there is no question that Facebook rose to the top. Facebook rose to the top, has been at the top, and will probably stay at the top for quite some time. But they do have things that are issues that become risks to the company. So talking about the business itself, how do they generate their revenues, right? Facebook is free to the users, obviously, but they're an ad revenue platform. They get their revenue from ad space being sold. And as we're in a new, electronic medium with more and more attention diverted away. You might be watching this video on Facebook, right? As maybe somebody shared it on Facebook. But as more and more attention is diverted away from television and from other places, social media has become an integral part of our lives. But Facebook has taken some heat. Facebook's taken some heat, one, for its size, right? So Facebook and Google, very recently, there was an antitrust probe against both Facebook and Google, and pretty much big tech in general, about how they're controlling the market, and do they control too much of the market. So that antitrust probe did cause a little bit of weakness in the shares, and that actually was a continuation of weakness that had happened from earnings a while ago. So Facebook knows, okay, we've got a problem when it comes to big tech, and that's definitely an issue that they run into. Another one is the whole concept of privacy and security. Facebook paid a multi-billion-dollar fine over privacy and security earlier this year, and that multi-billion-dollar fine really woke people up to the fact that Facebook was not exactly being perfectly secure with all the data that was in there. You know, we talk all this stuff about data and where it all goes. Can you imagine a world where people actually just give you their phone numbers and email addresses? Imagine if somebody one time threw just a book that had everybody's phone number and address on it. Oh my goodness, the world would come to an end. Oh wait, that was the phone book. But anyway, I digress. So Facebook has an issue when it comes to privacy, and that's what people have their big fear over. So one of the things that Facebook is trying to do is say, okay, what are some other revenue streams that we can create, or what are some other things that we can do to really kind of help if this is a concern, what's some news we can make and some other things we can do. And one of them is cryptocurrency. So Facebook has said, let's get into the cryptocurrency world with the Libra, right? The Facebook's Libra currency is one of its newer ideas. And the idea with Libra is that it's going to be an open source global currency that anybody can use, that's a lot more readily accessible and usable than Bitcoin. So ultimately what Facebook's trying to do is to create its own marketplace where Libra is the economy of choice that people are using inside of there. Now, that presents a litany of conversations and issues and potential problems for Facebook, as the U.S. Treasury immediately says, whoa. That can't happen, right? That's our currency. And so they get a lot of regulation. There's a lot of problems from the U.S. regulators around Libra and what it's going to do. And the interest rates, by the way, that the governments have, where we have low interest rates and globally negative interest rates, also affect the movement of Libra later on. So from a fundamental standpoint, I think what that does is that puts a little bit of doubt into investors' minds. And Facebook, over their last quarter, right? Over their last quarter, they were 48% lower in their earnings per share growth. So by being 48% lower in their earnings per share growth, and their earnings per share estimate was 17% lower than expected. And from that, we saw a really strong drop off in the price of the stock, right? A very strong drop off in the price of the stock. Now, Facebook has a beta of about 1.26. And what that means is that it moves about 26% more volatile than the S&P 500 in general. And so in a down market, there's a chance it will go down faster. In an up market, it should go up faster. However, we've not really seen that over the course of 2018. 2019. Looking at the fundamentals of the stock, we can see that in 2019, yes, Facebook has risen, but we're still not anywhere near the all-time high of about $219 a share. Facebook has really kind of gone sideways for the past 2 years or so, sitting out around $190 a share. It's got a chance to close back up into that area, but when looking at the weekly chart, we can see that there's a fair amount of resistance up there just above 200. And that resistance up above 200 is something to pay attention to. Now, the other piece is, take a look at how when we overlay moving averages onto this chart. Now, when we overlay those moving averages onto the chart, you can see that we're above the 50-week moving average, the 50-week moving average being right in the middle, and the 200 is below the 50, and the 20 is above the 200. So we call that a stacked moving average envelope. So it is in a bullish position with a stacked moving average envelope for investors on a weekly time period. But moving over to the daily time period, we can see that we are putting in what could be a bit of a topping pattern. You see over here on the far left earlier in the year, around May, possibly putting in one shoulder, with the middle of August around 208 being ahead? And are we putting in an additional shoulder? I think that Facebook very well could be setting up for a little bit of a drop down and a pullback. The S&P 500 has gone to brand new all-time highs, and Facebook hasn't had the same strength over the past 2 quarters. And I think that with that weakness we've seen over the past couple of quarters, that could indeed create a rollover for the stock. So with that potential for a rollover, I'm actually not confident that Facebook's going to continue to be one of those super high flyers, right? People talk about the FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. I don't see Facebook as one of the high flyers that's going to continue to drive the market. I see Facebook as being slightly underperforming in a bullish market and a higher performance in a bearish market, meaning when the market's bullish, it's not going to perform as well as the market. And when the market goes bearish, I think Facebook has a chance to perform worse than the market. So from a pure equity rotation standpoint, my outlook is that I would be a little bit more bearish longer term, but ultimately I'm not so sure that I would be bearish enough to short it or try to make money on the downside. I would just not be as bullish as I have been over the past 5 years, right? Kind of like our Scotch, there's a lot that goes inside of Facebook. There's a lot that goes in there and a lot that can go wrong. And it doesn't take a lot for this thing to go wrong, as we saw in that recent earnings report of Facebook a while ago. This was earlier last year, where there was a humongous gap that really scared investors away. So keeping an eye on that is something for us to kind of be aware of as Facebook went, late. I was thinking it was third quarter last year, Facebook took a pretty big hit from 218. I think overnight it gapped to about 175. And so it was a pretty big hit. Is that going to happen again? Is that an area that people need to concern themselves with again on Facebook, especially if they don't have the earnings that they're looking for? So until next week, everybody, cheers to you. Have a great week, and I will see you soon. Thanks.